You don't just wake up one day and decide to become a Sigma. The traits that define this personality type, the independence, the preference for keeping things private, the comfort with being misunderstood, these aren't choices people make because they think it's cool or trendy. They're survival mechanisms that develop during childhood when regular social strategies stop working or become too dangerous to rely on. Most people assume Sigma males are just naturally introverted or prefer being alone, but the reality is usually much darker than that. Behind the calm exterior and self-reliance, there are often childhood experiences that taught them early on that depending on others leads to disappointment, that showing vulnerability invites attack, and that the safest place in the world is inside your own mind, where no one else can reach you. These aren't dramatic sob stories or excuses for antisocial behavior. They're explanations for why some people develop such strong internal compasses and why they seem so comfortable operating outside normal social hierarchies. When you understand what shapes a Sigma during his formative years, his adult behavior starts making perfect sense in ways that can be both impressive and heartbreaking. The patterns that create Sigma males often begin in childhood environments where the usual tactics like pleasing people, fitting in, or asking for help either don't work or actively make things worse. This forces them to learn how to protect themselves emotionally while still functioning in a world that wasn't built in their favor. If you're a Sigma, or if you've ever felt different growing up, here are 6 dark childhood secrets that shaped your Sigma mindset, turning you into a silent force who plays by their own rules. Number 1. You had to mature faster because survival depended on it. Picture being 8 years old and realizing that the adults in your life can't be counted on to handle basic responsibilities. So if you want things to work out, you better figure it out yourself. While other kids were playing games and trusting that someone else would take care of the important stuff, you were learning to read situations, manage emotions, and solve problems that should have been way above their pay grade. Maybe it was having parents who were too busy with their own drama to notice you needed help with homework, or being the oldest kid who had to take care of younger siblings because mom was working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Whatever the specific situation, you quickly learned that childhood innocence was a luxury you couldn't afford, and that waiting for someone else to fix things usually meant nothing got fixed at all. This forced maturity creates a weird dynamic where you're simultaneously more capable and more isolated than other kids your age. You can handle situations that would overwhelm most adults, but you also can't relate to peers who are still living in a world where someone else is responsible for the big decisions and scary problems. The survival instincts you develop during this time don't just disappear when you become an adult. They become the foundation for how you approach every relationship and challenge for the rest of your life. You learned early that self-reliance isn't just a good idea. It's the difference between things working out and things falling apart, which is why asking for help or depending on others still feels risky even when it's completely safe. Number 2. You often felt like an outsider early on, even in familiar places. You know that feeling when you're sitting in a room full of people who are supposed to be your family, friends, or classmates, but somehow you feel like you're watching everything from behind glass. Even in places where you technically belonged, there was always this sense that you were different in ways that other people couldn't understand or didn't want to deal with. It might have started with being the kid who asked too many questions that made adults uncomfortable, or having interests that nobody else in your family shared, or just thinking about things in ways that seemed to confuse or annoy the people around you. While other kids seemed to fit naturally into whatever group they were born into, you felt like you were constantly translating yourself into a language other people could understand. This early outsider experience teaches you that belonging isn't something you can take for granted. It's something you either earn through performance or learn to live without. You become really good at observing group dynamics from the outside, which gives you insights that insiders miss. But it also means you never fully relax into the comfort of just being accepted for who you are. The interesting thing about this childhood pattern is how it shapes your adult relationships. You're not surprised when you don't fit in with new groups because you never really fit in with your original groups either. This makes you more independent and less desperate for social approval. But it also means you carry a certain emotional distance, even with people you genuinely care about, because part of you is always prepared for the moment when you'll be on the outside looking in again. Number 3. Betrayal cut deep, forging your heart to trust no one completely. There's a specific type of pain that comes from having someone you completely trusted turn around and use your trust against you. And when this happens during childhood, it rewires how you approach every relationship that comes after. Maybe it was a parent who promised they'd stop drinking and then showed up drunk to your school play, or a best friend who shared your biggest secret with everyone just to get a laugh, or a teacher you looked up to who made you feel stupid for asking questions. The betrayal that shapes future Sigma males usually isn't dramatic or movie-worthy. It's often quiet, consistent disappointment from people who should have been safe. You learn that even people who claim to love you will choose their own comfort, convenience, or social status over protecting your feelings or keeping their word, and this lesson gets burned into your memory in ways that don't fade with time. What makes childhood betrayal really damaging is that kids naturally trust completely until they're taught not to. So when that trust gets broken, it doesn't just hurt. It fundamentally changes how you evaluate people and relationships. You start looking for signs of potential betrayal in everyone you meet, not because you're paranoid, but because experience has taught you that most people will choose themselves over you when it really matters. This early lesson in human nature creates adults who can care deeply about people while simultaneously maintaining emotional insurance policies against being hurt again. You'll invest in relationships, but you'll always keep something in reserve, which can look like emotional unavailability to others, but actually represents a survival strategy learned from people who taught you that complete trust is dangerous. Number 4. You saw the world clearly, but that clarity left you alone. There's something really lonely about being the kid who notices that everyone's just pretending things are fine when they're obviously not. While your classmates seemed perfectly happy going along with whatever adults told them, you couldn't help but see the obvious stuff that didn't make sense, like how the popular kids got away with things that would get you in trouble, or how teachers had clear favorites, but acted like they treated everyone the same. You were probably that kid who asked questions that made adults squirm or pointed out things that everyone else was ignoring, and pretty quickly, you figured out that most people don't actually want honesty. They want you to go along with whatever makes them comfortable, even when it's clearly not true. This puts you on a totally different level than other kids who seem fine just accepting whatever story they're given. When you can see through the fake stuff that everyone else buys into, it becomes really hard to connect with people who are living in what feels like a completely different reality than yours. As Oscar Wilde once said, "The truth is rarely pure and never simple, and when you're naturally good at spotting the complicated truth behind simple stories, it sets you apart from people who prefer things to stay simple and comfortable." Making friends becomes almost impossible because real friendship needs people who can handle the same level of honesty, and most people just can't. You end up with very few close friends, sometimes none at all, not because you're mean or weird, but because finding people who can deal with reality instead of just pretending everything's fine is way harder than it should be. Number 5. You learn to spot fakes and snakes before anyone else could. Growing up around people who regularly said one thing and did another, or where adults made promises they had no intention of keeping, creates kids who become experts at reading the gap between what people claim to be and what they actually are. You developed an almost supernatural ability to spot inconsistencies in behavior, catch lies before they'd fully formed, and sense when someone's motivations didn't match their presented image. This skill usually develops out of necessity rather than natural talent, when your safety or emotional well-being depends on accurately reading people's true intentions. Your brain gets really good at picking up on subtle cues that other people miss or ignore. You learn to watch what people do rather than listening to what they say, because experience has taught you that actions reveal character in ways that words often disguise. The ability to see through people's facades becomes both a superpower and a burden, because once you can spot manipulation, dishonesty, or hidden agendas, you start seeing them everywhere. This makes you more difficult to fool or take advantage of. But it also makes genuine connection harder because you're always scanning for red flags, even when you want to trust someone. What's particularly isolating about this childhood-developed skill is how it affects your adult relationships. You can see through people's social masks so clearly that sometimes you know things about their character that they don't even know about themselves. But sharing these insights usually makes people defensive rather than grateful, so you learn to keep your observations to yourself and navigate relationships with information that others don't have access to. Number 6. School felt like a place where you had to hide who you were. School is supposed to be where kids learn and grow, but for future Sigmas, it often becomes a daily exercise in camouflage, where showing your real thoughts, interests, or personality feels risky or pointless. You quickly figure out that being genuine gets you labeled as weird, too intense, or difficult, so you learn to dial down your natural curiosity, hide your actual opinions, and present a watered-down version of yourself that won't attract negative attention. Maybe you were the kid who found the assigned reading boring, but loved researching random topics that fascinated you, only to discover that teachers didn't appreciate when you knew more about certain subjects than they did. Or you had ideas and insights that were too complex or different for classroom discussions, so you learned to keep quiet rather than deal with blank stares or being told you were overthinking everything. School's social rules often punish authenticity and reward conformity, which creates a painful choice for kids who naturally think differently. Either fake being normal and feel disconnected from everyone around you, or be yourself and risk being rejected, bullied, or misunderstood by both peers and authority figures. This experience of having to hide your real self during formative years teaches you that most environments aren't safe for authenticity, and that fitting in requires constant performance rather than genuine connection. As an adult, you carry this lesson into workplaces, social groups, and even romantic relationships, where part of you is always evaluating how much of your real personality is safe to reveal without facing negative consequences. If this felt familiar or made sense in a way most things don't, give the video a like and consider subscribing for more insights into the Sigma mindset and similar topics. Comments are always open for those who want to share their perspective. Thanks for watching.